Fall is here today, September 22nd, first day of autumn. And what we're going to do today is we're going to do a fall garden tour. Show everyone where we're at and what's going on in the garden. So come along with me and let's see what's happening. Right here is Seed Starting Central. Actually, as soon as the seeds germinate, they come out here, and I've got them sitting under this tree on these old picnic tables. Now, some of these I've already put out a lot of them, and I've just got some extras there. Some of these are really ready to get into the ground. I got my broccoli. I've got some corobis. I have some collards and rutabagas over here, bunch of cauliflower, and these are just some of the old ones that I've already put in, but occasionally I'll come back and I'll grab some of these. At the compost pile over here, I've been kind of busy. Of course, we'll watch the temperature and see we're just below the hot range, so this is working on down. Of course, this was full to the top when I covered it. It's dropping pretty fast. This is the new batch that's in here, but we've been pulling up so many crops and plants that we've got to overflow here. I'll just take the hay fork and throw this in there as it goes down, which won't be very long. All our potatoes are over here, and our onion plants that we've hit started that we'll plant in a few weeks. We have the only thing that's coming up, and these were actually planted. I mentioned in an earlier video, these are my Magic Molly potatoes. They're blue potatoes. And the first crop that was a late spring crop was really a failure. It had just a few very small potatoes, but I kept them for seed, and I planted them in pots first to make sure they were going to come up instead of just planting them in containers. And of course, the bigger ones come up faster. They're in this container, and the others were in that other container. Now my other fall potatoes, it's a little early. They haven't popped the top. We'll see how long this takes on them. Today it's kind of another rainy day. We've got another tropical depression coming through from minor hurricane. We do have some looks like some blight and stuff. I'm gonna have to come in here and cut off some more leaves, but we are doing good as far as our cucumbers. Our second crop is doing good. It's about time to pick that off, and we have a lot of new ones coming on, so these will keep going. Our weather's still warm enough, and it's cool enough so they'll really do good. We'll go ahead and start right here. Looks like there's a weed off in there, needs to. I have some lettuce here and some fennel. That's first year for growing it. I have a bunch of golden beets, and they're looking just a little rough, and the reason for that is here, the last tropical depression that come through in the rain, I shut my automatic timers off, shut the water off, and then I forgot to turn them back on. So I had kind of a problem with my beets in here. Same thing with my red beets, same thing with my cilantro, and same thing with my chard. It will survive, it will come back, but it's needing some attention. And over here we have our broccoli, which is doing really well. There's a few plants that had died, but it's not many, and I'll probably get in here and pop a few back in there. And down towards the end of this row, we put us in a few purple corobis. On this next row here, we have some more chard. This is actually Bright Lights. The other chard was Rainbow Chard. I wanted to try the two different ones and see how they did. And right here we have our leek. A lot of these are multiple sown, so they'll come up in little clumps. We'll thin them as we need to. And then we have some more golden beets in here. These are some of these are multiple sown, these larger ones. Now the other ones I sowed the seed in little, I think it's 208 cell trays that I had actually cut down. But I sowed one seed per slot, and as most of you know, a lot of times the beet seed is a multiple seed pod there, kind of. So a lot of times you'll get one, sometimes you'll get 2 or 3 come from the same one. But these are all beets. We have some arugula, rocket arugula that we put out here, and then we have some endives that are at the end of this row. We actually have some more plants to set out. We have some Dutch flat and some early girl cabbage, and we have some collards over here. And we have some more over here. This is dinosaur kale, Black Magic dinosaur kale, and the other cabbage. The jalapeno pepper, some of the plants are, well, I say just very few of them are struggling. They actually, now that it's got cool weather, they're really blooming heavy again. Those of you that decided to pull them out because they didn't look too healthy, if you would have just waited just a little bit. Down here in the south, a lot of people see they stop producing. They don't look very good, but they're waiting for cool weather to come on. These have been steadily producing a little bit, but now that cool weather is coming on, their size will increase and they'll get back to doing their business. Now I have my cherry tomatoes right here, but as you can see, part of the roots are pulled out of the ground. We're in the process of removing these, and normally we'd cut them off, but as you can see, these roots, this is one of my struggles, is that we have the root knot nematodes. That's why the roots look so big and bulbed up like that, is because they lay their eggs in the roots. And so what we'll do is actually pull these out. They will go into the compost. A lot of people worry about composting and stuff like that, but the temperature in the compost, if it's done right, is really will really take care of them. This is looks a little rough, and it's a little bigger because these are actually, I guess they will turn red, but they're actually not. Now looks like the wind has decided from the weight to take off one limb, so what we'll do is I'll just harvest this whole limb, take it in, and deal with that. Same thing with this right here. Normally we don't stake our peppers. There's normally not a need to. They end up being sturdy enough. But with the amount of production that's on them right now, as you can see, it probably wouldn't have been a bad idea to tie these up. And we might have to. These will produce for a while. The production was way down. The peppers were really small. But now that it's cool weather, they'll go back to producing good. You can see plenty of bloom, plenty of fruit on there. That's the way it always is in some of the hotter climates. Now we're in zone 8B, which gives you a partial idea of temperatures, but some people in zone 8B, and being that's got to do with your wintertime low temperatures, some people have crops that grow good year round, or all year rather, and they don't deal with the heat. But here in the summertime, we'll get into the mid 90s or even 100s, and a lot of plants will actually suffer, drop fruit such as that, but then they'll come back whenever it cools down. And this row here is my strawberries, and I'm not proud of how good they did because of the way they was planted. Well, now they are putting on strawberries, avians, and they're ever-bearing, and I'm just hoping that we'll get a few sets come out and be able to get some more starts. I had 50, and I'm probably lucky if I got 10. I've interplanted, this is endive that's up here, but I've interplanted lettuces in with the strawberries, so not to waste the row, so I'd have something planted. And we'll relocate the strawberries once it gets cooler, but by then the lettuce will be done, so we'll deal with that. These over here, and the camera actually makes it look yellow. These are nice and red, and they're starting to get ripe. Some of the vines are starting to dry on this red curry squash, and I'm hoping that it gets there in a hurry because I need to clear this row out. But as many of you know, pumpkin, squash, and such as that, if you pick them early, the color might ripen up, but the fruit flavor, you're not going to have the fruit flavor like you need. Now this is where the beans and corn and patty pan squash were. This row is worked down, ready for the next crop. So we'll go ahead and get that in here in the next week or two. This is the few parsnips that I have. I'm going to come and plant something else in here with them so they can enjoy their self and go ahead and make. And hopefully I'll let one of these go to seed so I can have some good viable seed for next year, because this didn't do too good. I do have a hole here in my thing. One of my drip lines blew out, and wash that out. I need to deal with that. Over here we have our purple opal, and it's really doing good. It's been cut back. Actually, there's 4 plants there. They've just made a hedge. And here's our World Spice basil. Now, World Spice has a little leaf on it, and it tends to go to flower pretty quick. I think I'm just going to let this go ahead and flower out. I don't know that I'll plant it next year because we'll just have to see how the flavor is on it and go from there. Now, we've been harvesting a few of our onions, and they're kind of getting big. These are bunching onions, and these were some last fall. We planted some seeds, and then they bunched out, and so what we did was we separated them and planted them, and they all went to seed. Once they went to seed, we take harvest the seed from them and take the seed stalk off of them and just cut them about 3 inches long and throw them off in a container, and then in a few months we plant them back, and you end up with all these lovely large onions. Now, the bunching onion is a warmer onion for those of you that like warm onions, but they're really prolific, and as far as if you let them go to seed the next spring, you can have a good crop to plant back in, which that's what we've got. We have our carrots here, and the carrots they're good and healthy, and they're actually making nice little carrots in there. Won't be long, they'll be ready. These were kind of planted in the off time. This was sometime the first or middle of August, which is really not a time to plant carrots down here. These are the Denver half longs, I believe it is, and they did real good. The other impeters, they didn't do as well. Over here we have our zucchini. These are still doing good, but the blight is trying to whoop up on them. We've cut a few leaves off. We need to come in and cut some more. It's getting close to time these plants will probably be pulled out. Also, our dahlias are really kind of taking over now. We won't put these here next year, but we will pull up the tubers and we'll put them in a permanent place. My wife really loves the yellow ones, and of course we've got red, which are looking more orange. They hadn't been dead-headed, so they're not blooming quite like they should if they was taken real good care of. These other carrots over here, and of course we got a little bit of dinosaur kale too. It's not liking it here. It's needing a little more attention, and it's not getting it. And plus, like I say, we shut the water off, which was not the best measure. But anyway, that's the way life goes. This here is going to be the raised bed for herbs. We have some lemon basil in here, just starting out, and we have, they're kind of hard to see, but we have our little chives. They're just starting out, and then we have some thyme that's in here, but this is going to be that one. And we actually have mushrooms that are wanting to grow, which for most of you, if you have mushrooms, you know that you've got a healthy soil. But we've been working on preparing more beds. We have this other raised bed. This is going to be used a lot for cilantro. If we grow a lot of cilantro now, cilantro keeps real good in the freezer. So if you just pull the leaves off it, put it in a vacuum bag and vacuum it and freeze it, it'll be just as good as fresh cilantro when you pull it out. Now, whenever we buy it at the store or something, when we don't have it, we just put it in a freezer bag and just stick it in the freezer, and it'll keep for a month or so that way. But we've established these new beds. They're ready to be planted, and we've established these two beds here. We're working our way down, clearing on down. We've got to retarp some areas. We pulled them up over here where our watermelons were, and we've moved it down there, which the wind blew it over. We hadn't staked it down yet, and said we'd leave it that way. Whenever this rain come through, it would be good and wet, and then we'll put it back on, and then we'll try finishing out these other rows too. It's about time to go ahead and pull out all these winter squash, and we'll get these pumpkins out of here. As you can see, everything's dying back. But what I wanted to show you here is some of my Frankenstein fruit. We have, and it'll be easier to see the ones out there, but we'll harvest off the rest of these winter squash. But we have our Georgia candy roaster. That tan one is pretty much the way it should be, but we have a lot of them that are yellow, and I'm sure, or I say yellow, they're orange, and I'm sure now that as far as they'll come out with green stripes, and then they'll go ahead and ripen up. We're still waiting them to finish, but I'm sure that you probably know why they're orange. You know, we have pumpkins right here with them, and we have a real situation of cross-pollinating over here. We've yet, and of course the vines are all dying down, but we've yet to have a good watermelon come out of here, a red one. for some reason are sugar babies, or little bitty babies the size of a baseball. And of course they aren't ripe, they're still a little bit early. It looks like a Jubilee down there, and it might be one that's going to make. These vines are pretty much dying, but we've cut open one of these, and it hadn't been it wasn't ready. So that's what we're dealing with there. Now we'll come on over here to our late tomatoes, and they're definitely growing like crazy. A lot of them are setting tomatoes. They're just they're having such a fun time with this cool weather. Now these, I have actually been pruning these. Normally I wouldn't, but I've been pruning out the suckers on here, and they're really hard to capture on a lot of these, because what happens is, and these are Cherokee purples, but as you can see here, now this is the sucker limb comes out, but a lot of times it'll grow out like a top before you catch it, and then the limbs comes out. Or it might grow way up past where the elbow is, where you normally look for a sucker, and start growing out. So it makes it really difficult when it comes to pruning, when it's based on the same as a normal tomato. So, but we're not going to worry about it too much. We've got some small tomatoes that's setting off in here. It should be pretty good as far as getting some late crop tomatoes, unless we get some kind of unknown crazy frost that comes in. We are going to do tomatoes different next year as far as the way we stake them up, and we'll work on that this fall, so when we're ready to plant, we'll have all that system in place. We're also working on, this is where the purple hull peas are. We've cleaned out these beds. We're working on changing our drip system. We'll end up putting in broccoli and cauliflower or cabbage over here. That'll be that's our plans. That's what we've got the drip system set up for. We still lack getting this last bed with its irrigation system. The lima beans are going crazy. My bamboo trellis was, in my opinion, it's kind of a failure. Bamboo is so slick, and it's hard to keep it from sliding. Even though we use wire and wired up tight, it seems that we've been repairing this the whole time. So next year we're going to go with a different system, as you can see right here, because the way it's shifted, the legs are even off the ground on this end. If it wasn't for this T-post we set in here, it would be collapsing. The Mississippi silver skin crowders, they still have some. They're producing a little bit slower. The green beans didn't do so well, and a lot of this is because how tight they're in there. They didn't have quite enough room. That cedar, I should have left it at a single row, because the cedar puts seeds so close together. And the zippers, they're starting to play out. There's still peas on here, but it's lucky if they get a peck of them every couple of days. Now our red curries over here, which you can see we've got plenty of them. Vines are dying. They're starting to harden up their stems as far as starting to dry up. So it won't be long. These will be ready to harvest. The Armenian cucumbers aren't looking the greatest as far as they've got some blight and stuff, and I'll need to do some trimming up, but they are starting to set cucumbers. So we will get a few of these this year, but I don't look for a whole lot. It's like I say, it's just the fall, and late blight is pretty tough in the fall down here where it's hot and humid. And the gem corn is it's up there pretty tall. It's probably a little over 8 foot. Of course, it is about a foot off the ground. This is planted kind of tight. I hope that it does do okay. It's has plenty of ears, and it's tasseling, and hopefully if we can keep the worms out of it, which is one thing. It's not like we're going to eat it. This is for seed, but it is doing pretty good, and I'm hoping that it doesn't have the problem like the poppy turquoise, where it ended up not being able to get pollen onto the tassels of the cobs or the ears. And we're going to look at the fig trees this time too. Now the fig trees, this one here is producing. As you can see, we've got a few that are starting to turn. They're not real big, which I'm not really concerned with this. This fig tree now has about 1.5 inches base to it. It started out less than 1/2 inch this year, and it's up about 5 foot tall. Now the other one, which it didn't start putting out until about a week after, it does have fruit. Both of them dropped their first fruit because they didn't have established roots, and they was growing. Now this one here is maybe pushing 30 inches, so it's about roughly almost about half the size. And it's got to do with, I think, partially where it gets its light. It's not located about 12 foot away from the other one, but the way the trees are and the way the sun goes, this one doesn't tend to get quite as much light over here. It gets shaded more. And I'm thinking that might have been why it hadn't grown quite so quick. But they are doing good for about losing them last fall, so I can't really complain. I think that they ought to have established root now, so even if they freeze, which sometimes we get real cold temperatures and we'll lose a fig tree to a really hard freeze, or this particular variety, if it's got a strong root, it'll pop back out from the root. But you can see right down here, this little cut here, this is what size it was, and it sprouted out below it, and this is where I actually cut off the dead part in the spring when it started out. So you can see it's really got some size to it, and the same with the other one, is really doing good. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it gives you an idea that in the fall, crops fail. It's time to pull them out, and it's time to put new ones in. And that's where I'm sitting, just like a lot of other people. I hear them with disappointment that their plants are dying, but it's all part of the process. If you want to see more of my videos, subscribe to me and hit the bell button, and like and share it. Happy gardening.